The billionaire wife everyone thought was perfect, Yasmin al-Mansour, has everything: beauty, wealth, a perfect future. But there's one thing she's hiding, a secret so embarrassing it could tear apart her relationship. The truth? She can't control her flatulence, and the stench? It's unbearable. But what happens when the truth finally comes out? Stay tuned to witness a powerful journey of self-acceptance, love, and the strength to embrace the imperfect you. This is Yasmin's story, and it might just change the way you see yourself. Hi, dearest viewer. If you're enjoying this story, a quick like or subscribe would be such a blessing. It helps me share more heartfelt romances with you. And if you don't mind, tell me where you're watching from. I read every single comment with a smile. In the heart of Dubai, where the sun blazed down upon the glittering glass towers, Yasmin al-Mansour was the epitome of grace and beauty. Surrounded by opulence, wealth, and power, her life appeared perfect to the outside world. She was engaged to Tariq al-Fahad, one of the most influential billionaires in the Middle East, whose name was synonymous with success. Their engagement had been the talk of the city. The couple's love story seemed like something straight out of a fairy tale, one that Yasmin had spent her life dreaming about. Yasmin's smile was radiant, her skin flawless, and her demeanor always poised. Her luxurious home was impeccably kept, each corner of the villa reflecting her desire for perfection. Her closet was filled with couture dresses, the finest jewelry, and shoes that sparkled as brightly as her future seemed to promise. With Tariq at her side, Yasmin's life felt like it was on an unshakable pedestal. But beneath the surface of her seemingly flawless existence lay a secret so embarrassing that Yasmin feared it could shatter everything she had worked so hard to build. Despite her picture-perfect life, Yasmin had lived with a condition since childhood that she couldn't control: uncontrollable flatulence. It wasn't just an occasional slip. Her condition was severe. The stench she produced was so overpowering that it could clear a room in seconds, leaving no space for polite excuses or even a simple explanation. For years, she had fought against the natural bodily function. Each day, Yasmin battled against the discomfort, hoping that the sensation would pass before it became a problem. But there were times, like in intimate moments with Tariq or during family gatherings, when the pressure would become too much to bear. When those moments arrived, Yasmin could do nothing but sit still and endure the agony of feeling paralyzed by the growing urgency inside her. Unable to excuse herself in time, she had learned to freeze, staring ahead, hoping the stench would not overwhelm her. The shame she carried was overwhelming. Yasmin's mind raced with worries of what would happen if Tariq, her beloved fiancé, ever found out. Would he still love her? Would his family, especially his mother, Amina al-Fahad, accept her if they knew the truth? The fear of ridicule kept her silent, locked in a world of internal battles and constant self-doubt. For years, she had managed to hide the truth, but with her wedding day quickly approaching, she knew it was becoming harder to keep her condition concealed. Tariq, of course, had no idea. He thought of Yasmin as perfect, the woman of his dreams. He had fallen in love with her the moment they met, and their relationship had always been filled with warmth, affection, and romance. Their love seemed unshakable, and to Yasmin it felt like the happiest chapter of her life. But the longer she kept her secret, the more it consumed her. She found herself growing distant from him, afraid that any moment could be the one when she would lose control. She couldn't risk him seeing her as anything less than flawless, especially with the wedding day just around the corner. To make matters even more complicated, there was Amina, her future mother-in-law. Amina al-Fahad was a woman of great wisdom and stature, a formidable presence in both Tariq's life and the business world. She had an uncanny ability to see through people, to read between the lines, and Yasmin knew that if she suspected anything out of place, Amina would catch on in an instant. The pressure to keep up a perfect front around her was immense, and Yasmin found herself trying even harder to gain Amina's favor, to prove that she was the perfect match for her son. Amina, though not unkind, had always been a woman of sharp judgment. Yasmin had watched the way Amina scrutinized others, her observations never missing a detail. Yasmin knew that she could not afford to disappoint Amina. The older woman's approval meant everything to her. If she failed to win Amina's trust, she feared that Tariq would be influenced by his mother's opinion. But no matter how hard she tried to perfect every detail of her life, Yasmin's secret remained a constant, suffocating burden. The days leading up to her wedding were filled with meticulous planning, lavish fittings, and endless preparations. Everything had to be perfect. The villa, the flowers, the guest list, all of it had to be flawless. Yet as she tried to immerse herself in the whirlwind of wedding preparations, the anxiety of her hidden secret grew. She could no longer pretend it didn't exist. The closer her wedding day came, the more the weight of her hidden secret pressed down on her, suffocating her with each passing moment. One evening, after a long day of handling last-minute details for the wedding, Yasmin found herself sitting alone in their beautiful villa, her mind spinning with the thought of the secret she could no longer keep. Tariq was out with his friends, and Amina had retired to her suite for the night. Yasmin, alone with her thoughts, felt the pressure building inside her again. Her stomach churned, and her body tensed as the familiar sensation of needing to pass gas took hold. She tried to breathe deeply, hoping it would pass, but it didn't. This time, the urgency was too much. Her face flushed with panic. She could feel the familiar paralysis set in, her body unable to move as she sat frozen in place. She glanced nervously at the door, praying Tariq wouldn't return home just then and Amina wouldn't unexpectedly walk in. But the fear of what would happen if anyone discovered her condition, especially her fiancé, was too much to bear. As the pressure built, Yasmin knew she had no choice but to face her fear head-on. She had already told herself that if Tariq ever found out, she would be ready to explain. But tonight, she wasn't sure if she could even find the words. She could already feel the shame of her secret swirling around her, making it harder to breathe. She had to tell him, and as she sat there, the weight of her secret pressing down on her chest, Yasmin finally made her mind. The truth would come out, whether she was ready or not. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting soft light across the luxurious living room, Yasmin al-Mansour sat nervously beside Tariq al-Fahad. The villa was quiet, with only the hum of the air conditioning and the soft murmur of distant city sounds filling the air. Tariq, her fiancé, was reading a business magazine, his attention fixed on the pages, seemingly unaware of the growing tension that was steadily building inside her. Yasmin's stomach churned, a familiar sensation of discomfort creeping through her body. She had tried to ignore it for as long as possible, but now it was undeniable. The debilitating paralysis she always experienced when her condition flared up was taking hold of her again. She could feel the heat rise to her face, her heart rate quickening as the familiar sense of panic gripped her. Her body froze, unable to move. The overwhelming sensation made it impossible to stand or walk to the restroom, and she was left trapped in her own discomfort. For years she had hidden this from him. Yasmin had worked tirelessly to maintain the image of the perfect fiancé, gracious, poised, and without fault. But this secret, this constant struggle that she had buried deep inside, was now pushing her to the brink. The secret she feared would shatter everything. She couldn't keep hiding it from him forever. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. The words were difficult to form, her voice shaking with anxiety. "Tariq," she began softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something I need to tell you, something I've been hiding from you." Tariq's attention shifted from his magazine to her. His brow furrowed with concern as he studied her face, noticing the pallor that had washed over her. She swallowed hard, her throat dry, her hands trembling. This was it, the moment she had dreaded. She could no longer keep the truth hidden. "I have a condition," she said, her voice faltering. She paused, trying to gather the strength to continue.
"It's hard to explain," she added, her words caught in her throat. "I can't control it, and when it happens, I can't move or excuse myself to the restroom." Tariq's eyes searched hers for a moment, his expression unreadable. Yasmin could feel the weight of his gaze, her heart hammering in her chest. She could see the confusion in his eyes, but also a growing sense of concern. She took another breath, forcing herself to continue. "When it happens," she said, her voice barely audible, "the smell is so bad, it's unbearable. I've been hiding it from you, and I'm so sorry. I don't want to lose you." The words felt like a confession, a release of all the guilt and shame she had carried for so long. Tariq was silent for a moment, his expression shifting from confusion to something darker. His jaw clenched, and his face reddened as he stood up abruptly.
His frustration clear. Yasmin's heart sank. She had expected him to be upset, but the anger in his voice when he spoke next felt like a dagger. "You've been hiding this from me?" he demanded, his voice rising. "All this time? You couldn't trust me enough to tell me the truth?" His words were sharp, each one cutting deeper into her. "How am I supposed to marry someone with a condition like this? What kind of future would we have?" Yasmin recoiled, the sting of his words hitting her like a blow. She had expected some level of disappointment, but the anger in his voice left her breathless. She had hoped that he would understand, that he would be patient with her, but the look in his eyes made her feel like a failure. The tears welled up in her eyes, but she fought to hold them back. She had never felt more alone in that moment. Before she could say anything more, the door to the living room opened, and Amina Al-Fahad, Tariq's mother, stepped inside. The smell hit her immediately, but instead of recoiling in disgust, Amina took a deep breath and steadied herself. She had been watching from a distance, aware of the tension in the room, but she didn't let the situation overwhelm her. With the wisdom of age, she calmly assessed the situation. Amina's presence was commanding, but her gaze softened as she approached Yasmin. "You've been carrying this burden for too long, Yasmin," Amina said gently, her voice calm and reassuring. "We're all human, and we all have our struggles. This isn't something to be ashamed of." Amina's words were like a balm to Yasmin's wounded heart. Tariq stood by, his face still flushed with anger, but Amina ignored his presence for the moment. Her focus was on Yasmin. "You've worked hard to build a life with my son," Amina continued, her voice firm but compassionate, "and I can see the love you have for him. This doesn't change who you are. We all have things we wish we could change about ourselves, but that doesn't make us any less worthy of love." Yasmin stared at Amina, stunned by her calm and wise response. She had expected rejection, especially from the one person she had tried so hard to impress. But Amina wasn't angry. There was no judgment in her eyes, only understanding. The compassion in Amina's words caught Yasmin off guard, and for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope. "I didn't want to burden you," Yasmin whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I thought you'd be disappointed in me." Amina shook her head, her gaze steady. Disappointment doesn't come from a condition you have no control over. It comes from not being honest, from hiding who you truly are. You've been more than patient, Yasmin. Let go of your fear. Tariq's anger slowly subsided as he watched his mother's reaction. He stood silent, unsure of how to proceed, his earlier frustration now mixed with a sense of confusion. Yasmin, however, felt a weight lifting off her chest. For the first time, she felt as though she didn't need to hide. Amina's wisdom and acceptance were more than she had ever hoped for, and in that moment, Yasmin realized that perhaps the truth wasn't something to fear after all. Despite Amina's unexpected support, Yasmin's relationship with Tariq was never the same again. While Tariq didn't outright reject her after learning about her condition, his initial reaction of fascination soon gave way to frustration. The truth, which had once seemed like a burden she carried alone, now became a problem in his eyes, one that he believed needed to be solved. At first, Tariq tried to be supportive. He asked Yasmin about the nature of her condition, trying to understand how it worked, how often it occurred, and what might trigger it. He listened with genuine concern, but as the weeks passed, his support shifted into something else entirely. He began suggesting solutions, seeing specialists, undergoing treatments, perhaps even medication that might cure her condition. Tariq had always been a man who solved problems with determination and money, and he assumed that this would be no different. But to Yasmin, Tariq's efforts felt less like support and more like manipulation. Each suggestion, each appointment he arranged for her to attend seemed to reduce her to a medical case, as though she were something broken that needed to be fixed. She wasn't the woman he loved anymore. She was a project, something he could control, something he could perfect. The very thing that had made her feel vulnerable, her flatulence, was now the focus of every action he made. And Yasmin could feel herself slipping further away from the man she thought she knew. Tariq didn't see it this way. He genuinely believed that by fixing her condition, they were making their lives better. The idea of Yasmin having this flaw, this issue that affected their relationship, bothered him in ways he couldn't fully explain. So he pushed her harder, gently but insistently, toward solutions. It made it seem as though it was in their best interest, his family's best interest, that she rid herself of this condition. One evening, after a particularly difficult conversation in which Tariq had suggested a new doctor he had found, Yasmin finally spoke her truth, her voice quivering with frustration. "I don't want to be fixed, Tariq," she said, her eyes meeting his with a strength she hadn't known she possessed. "This is me. You can't change it. I can't change it, and I don't want to feel like I have to hide from you anymore." Tariq stared at her, taken aback by her words. He was silent for a moment, not fully understanding the weight of what she had said. In his mind, he wasn't trying to change her, not really. He just wanted to help. But to Yasmin, it was clear. He saw her condition as a flaw. It wasn't just something she struggled with, it was something he wanted to erase. The realization stung, and Yasmin couldn't stop the feelings of resentment and helplessness that began to well up inside her. Every time Tariq asked her to change her habits, every time he suggested a new medication or a new approach to fix her condition, it felt like she was being suffocated. The tension between them was growing, and Yasmin could no longer ignore it. The more Tariq tried to help, the more it felt like he was pushing her further away. She felt trapped in her own life, unable to break free from the constant pressure to be something she was not. Tariq's frustration, his attempts to control the uncontrollable, only amplified her sense of helplessness. She loved him deeply, but the way he treated her condition made her feel like she wasn't enough as she was. The man she had thought would be her partner, someone who would accept her flaws and love her through them, was now treating her like an incomplete version of herself. Her discomfort was no longer just physical, it was emotional too. The tension of Tariq's judgment hung over every moment they spent together. She couldn't even relax in his presence without wondering what new suggestion he would come up with next, what new solution he would try to impose. She began to dread their conversations, and the distance between them grew. She no longer felt like his fiancée, the woman he adored. Instead, she felt like a patient on a never-ending journey of medical experiments, constantly evaluated and always found lacking. It was too much. Yasmin had reached her breaking point. After a particularly difficult conversation in which Tariq suggested that they meet with a new specialist he had found, Yasmin could no longer stay. She felt suffocated by the weight of expectations, by the constant scrutiny of her condition, and by the growing realization that she was losing herself in this relationship. Tariq was not the man she had fallen in love with. This version of him, the one obsessed with fixing her, was unrecognizable. That evening, Yasmin made up her mind. She packed a small bag, told Tariq she needed space, and left their villa without another word. She drove to the desert, to her family's estate, a quiet place away from the chaos of her life in Dubai. The long drive gave her time to think, time to breathe. The vastness of the desert stretched before her, the endless dunes offering a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in months. The quiet, the solitude, was a balm to her soul.
Here, in the isolation of the desert, she felt like she could finally let go of the pressure, the judgment, and the suffocating expectations that had weighed her down. As she stood outside, the cool evening air brushing against her face, Yasmin took a deep breath and closed her eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to release her gas with no shame, no fear. She stood there, embracing the moment of freedom, letting go of the shame that had controlled her life for so long. In that moment, Yasmin realized something important. She didn't need to be fixed. She didn't need to hide who she was anymore. Her condition didn't define her, and it didn't make her unworthy of love. She was still Yasmin, strong, capable, and deserving of respect, no matter what. The desert had given her clarity, and she knew that she couldn't go back to the life she had with Tariq, at least until things changed. She needed to find herself again, away from the pressures of trying to be perfect. It was time for her to take control of her own life, to embrace her flaws and own them, rather than trying to suppress them for others' sake. And so, standing alone in the vast desert, Yasmin made a vow to herself. She would never again allow herself to be controlled by anyone, not Tariq, not anyone. She would find her own way, on her own terms. The desert was a vast, silent expanse, stretching endlessly in every direction. For the first time in a long while, Yasmin found herself surrounded by nothing but the stillness of nature. No buzzing city noise, no pressure to look perfect, no expectations. Just the quiet hum of the desert wind, the golden dunes, and her own thoughts. This was exactly what she needed. For days, Yasmin walked along the soft sand, her feet sinking slightly with each step. The heat of the day faded into the coolness of the evening, but it was never
enough to erase the tension inside her. Despite the peaceful surroundings, she had yet to escape the storm inside her heart. There were too many questions, too much pain, and far too many fears. But as she walked through the endless sand, Yasmin began to feel something change. The vastness of the desert offered her space to think, to breathe, and to, for the first time in her life, let go. She allowed herself to release her gas without worry, something she had never dared to do in Tariq's presence, not in her own home, and certainly not in front of others. As the gas escaped, a feeling of relief washed over her, a sense of freedom she hadn't known in years. The weight she had carried for so long began to lift, slowly at first, but then more swiftly, like the wind sweeping the sand across the dunes. It wasn't just the physical relief, it was emotional too. Yasmin realized that for years she had allowed her condition to define her, to keep her from being who she truly was. She had spent so much time trying to hide, to suppress, to be someone she wasn't, just to fit the mold of perfection that Tariq and even her own family expected. But now, in the solitude of the desert, she understood something profoundly simple. Her condition didn't define her. She was still the same person, loving, strong, and deserving of respect. For years, she had believed that if she could just hide her flaw, just keep it out of sight, she would be worthy of love. She had convinced herself that if Tariq could accept her, he would love her completely. But she now saw that it wasn't her condition that made her unworthy, it was the way she had been treated because of it. The shame she had carried wasn't because of the condition itself, but because she had been made to feel that it was something to be ashamed of. It was how others viewed her, and how she let that perception shape her view of herself. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car approaching. She turned, shielding her eyes from the sun, and saw a figure in the distance. It was Tariq. His car kicked up sand as it came to a stop, and he stepped out, his face drawn with regret. Yasmin's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to follow her, but there he was, standing under the vast open sky, looking more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. Tariq had always been a man of power, used to taking control and used to being the one who made the decisions. But now, with the desert as their only witness, he was standing before her, uncertain and remorseful. Yasmin's heart felt a twist. Despite everything that had happened, despite the hurt she had felt, she still loved him. "I was wrong," Tariq said, his voice steady but tinged with regret. "I was wrong to try and change you, Yasmin. You're perfect just as you are." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and sincere. Yasmin didn't know what to say at first. She expected him to apologize, but hearing him speak those words, truly speak them, made her realize that he had seen her for the first time, really seen her. Yasmin stood still for a moment, the desert winds swirling around her, pulling at the hem of her dress. She looked at him, her heart heavy but filled with clarity. "I don't need you to fix me, Tariq," she replied softly, her voice steady. "I need you to accept me." Tariq stepped forward, his eyes full of emotion. "I do accept you, Yasmin. I didn't understand. I thought I was helping you, but I see now that I was wrong." He paused, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'm sorry for everything, for pushing you, for not seeing the woman you are. You don't need fixing, you just need to be yourself." Tariq's apology wasn't perfect, but it was real. Yasmin felt a warmth spread through her, something she hadn't felt in a long time, like the first rays of the sun breaking through the clouds after a storm. It wasn't that Yasmin needed Tariq to fix everything, but his willingness to accept her, flaws and all, meant more than she had realized. "I've been trying to hide," Yasmin said, her voice soft but clear. "I've been trying to be perfect for everyone, for you, for your family. But I'm not perfect, Tariq. I'm just me, and I want you to love me for who I am, not for who I pretend to be." Tariq nodded, his face softening as he reached out to take her hand. For the first time in a long while, Yasmin felt the full weight of his love, not as a man trying to change her, but as someone who accepted her completely. The moment was still, suspended in the quiet of the desert. The tension that had built up between them over the past weeks melted away. Yasmin didn't feel the need to apologize or hide anymore. She didn't have to explain herself. For the first time, she was free to be herself, to embrace who she truly was. With the sand dunes around them, Yasmin knew that she had found her strength, and it wasn't just in Tariq's acceptance. It was in her own ability to stand firm in who she was, to love herself, and to know that she didn't need anyone's approval to feel worthy. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the desert, Yasmin smiled. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt at peace with herself. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed Yasmin's journey of self-discovery and acceptance, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Leave a comment below and let us know what resonated with you the most. And remember, true love starts with self-love. Embrace who you are and never be afraid to be yourself. See you in the next video.